Mm.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Pikes Peak Business Builders series. My name is Lauren Shakes, and I'm the Associate Director here at the Colorado SBDC serving the Pikes Peak region. For those of you who may not be familiar with our office, the Colorado SBDC serving the Pikes Peak region provides no-cost one-on-one business advising, access to specialized expertise, and practical support for entrepreneurs and small business owners at every stage of growth. We work with startups and established businesses year round, helping with everything from business planning and marketing strategy to financial projections, capital readiness, and scaling operations, and even your exit plan if that's where you are in your stage of your business. In addition to individual advising, we offer programs, workshops, and events throughout the year, all catered to our small business friends and our entrepreneurs in our community. The Business Builder Series is one of the ongoing programs that we offered, and it's designed to meet business owners where they are and give them the tools that they can apply immediately. This series happens every Wednesday for those of you who are joining us for the first time, and it will be virtual. And it's intentionally scheduled to be during the lunch hour to give you a chance to pause. And what a great topic for today. But to pause midweek, recalibrate, and focus on working on your business instead of constantly being pulled in to working in your business. And that brings us to today's session. I am so excited to introduce Rebecca Hawkins, owner of Regenerative Workplaces and our very own SBDC advisor. Rebecca, I will turn it over to you, and thank you so much for bringing today's presentation to us.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have another session on this very, very important topic. I love the vision of the SBDC to consider among all of the different business acumen that we need as small business owners, the skill of self-care, the skill of well-being, of managing ourselves and our employees to create better workplaces and better community and better environment. So I am grateful to be able to curate a monthly Wellbeing Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday of every month, is part of this Business Builder series. I think all of the sessions are critical. So I'd say mark your calendar for noon on Wednesday all year long to come to these sessions on various topics related to your business that are free. But the fourth Wednesday of every month is about us and our own well-being and our employees' well-being. And I am happy and excited to present our speaker this month, Morgan Hildebrand. I met Morgan first, I think, through one of many networking events that she is involved in. She's all over the community and BNI and women's networking and Tri-Lakes Chamber. And she inspired me the first time I ever met her. She is a Air Force veteran and a wellness coach herself and an incredible leader and now the founder of Holistique that is going to be opening ribbon cutting coming in Monument on April 24th. Mark your calendars. So I'm happy to introduce Morgan to share this important topic about moving from burnout to readiness by understanding the language that we use. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Morgan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was incredibly kind. I appreciate it. I'm still doing my own work on accepting praise and compliments and niceties. So thank you. That's what I'm supposed to say. I'm going to work on that. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start these slides and let me know if anybody has any trouble seeing them. I'll take a second to introduce myself. Please, if you are here today and you would like to drop in the chat your name, your organization, where you are positioned in that organization. Doesn't have to be an official title. It can be where you see yourself or how you see yourself in the organization. And then maybe a line or two about how you define mental health, what that is for you starting. And we'll come back to that at the end. Um, yes, I am an Air Force veteran. I am also the founder of Holistique. I have 19 years working in community level prevention and leadership at the operational and strategic levels. And so basically what that means is I take a lot of time and energy in my career, specifically with the military, but now through Holistique for our community, to really look at what are barriers to care, how are people utilizing the resources they have, why aren't they utilizing the resources they have, and then what's the language that surrounds that so that we can improve that access to care and those help seeking behaviors. And all of that really fits into business culture because we're all working, we're all paying bills, we're all interacting in our community. So understanding what that looks like is really, really important. If you have questions or you'd like me to stop and you want to jump in with anything, come off mute, throw it in the chat, interrupt me anytime. And if I'm looking all over the place, I am trying to multitask with the slides and reading the chat. So I might go a little bit back and forth, but bear with me, we'll get through it. Okay. And thank you, Sarah and Rebecca, CEO Coach, Angie. I see that. Define mental health as where your clarity is. Got it. Nope, those are great examples. Feeling good about your community, moving in the right direction. Energy and capacity. I appreciate that. Thank you. I see we have some new people in here. Jump in anytime. Okay, so we'll jump in and get started. Catch up anybody who wants to be caught up as they need. So let's start with then the idea of what is mental health. Generically, right, 1 in 5 adults experiences a diagnosable mental health condition each year. So that sounds like a really high number. And most of us, when we're thinking about mental health, we think of that line and we're either good or we're not good, right? But in reality, okay, mental health is on a dual continuum. So we're talking a lot about really what are skills and abilities and how those skills and abilities impact our ability to have mental clarity. And as life happens, right, we're always going to be fading on both of those lines. So that's why we say mental health really comes on a dual continuum. If you ever hear someone talk about, oh, my feelings come in waves, that's because life doesn't happen in one single moment. Life is this huge context of whatever is going on at home, with family, with kids. How are the bills? How's my personal relationship? What's happening with mom? Oh, by the way, here's everything I have to do at work. And so if right now something you can do is to really kind of take a look at what that dual continuum is and where do you feel you are? What is that place where you stand? You don't have to put that in the chat. You can kind of think about that for yourself. But if you feel like you have really great skills and abilities and you feel like you have really great mental clarity, where do you actually fall in that dual continuum? Do you feel resilient or do you feel sinking or do you feel stuck? And then let's talk through that about what that really means. When we are talking about whole person wellness, in the capacity of business, leadership, growing ourselves professionally, we're talking about whole person performance. Okay. And so that's not just, do I have a counselor and I feel good because I talk about my feelings? That's really talking about whole person life, whole person performance. So we talk about physical health, emotional health, financial stress, family, what those responsibilities look like, but also your identity and your belief system, where you're at in your career versus where you'd like to be or grow into your career, and what your capacity is for recovery and where you interact with the community. All of those things create categories of whole person. And so when one is suffering, it can kind of trickle out into those other areas. And that's not a problem because that's natural, that's human, that happens. But what we want to identify in order to make sure that we're well resourced and we're utilizing those resources so our whole person performance is high is where are my stigmas? What are my system barriers to access resources that help me recuperate or recover in those categories? And how do I understand when I'm sinking versus when I'm stuck versus when I'm resilient, right? So are we developing our skills and abilities? When are we developing our skills and abilities? And how is that affecting our performance? So that's just like a little baseline on where we're having this conversation from. Stacy, thank you for jumping in the chat. Mental health should be a priority. I absolutely agree with you. So when I am talking to anyone about mental health, if we're talking about the professional setting, the workplace, organizational management, or we're just talking to individual clients about how they feel and interact with mental health and wellness, language is always where I like to start. So the general things, right? Language interpretation, right? Sometimes we think about it as code switching. That's a really academic term. We associate that a lot with really specific cultural dynamics when we talk about code switching. But code switching generally means context filtering. How are we using acronyms? Is that acronym applicable to my audience? Do I need to spell it out? When we talk about reports and briefings and background papers, what does that really mean? Are we talking in technical terms or practical application for our client, right? You don't work in the industry. Why would you know that word? So how do we translate our communication so that we're removing that generational slang or that terminology that we're all used to using in the community and the culture because we work here? And how does that translation of the language change the environmental stress, right? So that means when we're talking about context filtering or we're talking about decision making and leadership, are we using terms that translate to the audience? And if we're starting with language that is universal or easiest to understand, then we're setting a baseline that everyone in the conversation can communicate freely. And that's our number one, whether we're working with professionals and peers or we're working with clients and community. And if there's any questions here or someone has some good feedback or experience with this, please jump in. It's all good communication for how we move forward. Okay. So this is where we really start to talk about how that language impacts our internal organizational culture, right? We have readiness and we have burnout. And this is where I would really start to ask for that engagement with our audience here today. Where do you personally see your organization? Are you falling more into that readiness category, or are you falling more into that burnout category? And so sometimes we can take a step back as leaders, and regardless of where you are in your organization or your formal duty title, leadership, right? You're leading the organization towards the outcomes. You're aspiring to have great outcomes for the organization so that you make more money, so that you grow professionally. So when we think about that, what we hear is what our environment, what our community, what our culture is in the organization. What we say is how we communicate our standard for that organization. And so where you are in speaking, where you are in hearing the language that's used in your office settings and your professional settings tells you a lot about what the culture says about readiness versus burnout. Are there any examples from the group here today about maybe what you hear and if it's an old organization, what you heard there and what that told you? No one has to participate. It's okay to just listen.
You know what? I actually think that one of the biggest areas of language that contributes to burnout has been, in my work experience, the wearing busyness as a badge of honor. Um, and so it's this tendency when throughout the work environments I've been in the past, and even now as a solo entrepreneur, when someone says, "How are you doing?" Like the first thing you say is, "Oh my gosh, I'm so busy." Like that is just expected or normal, or that somehow signals success or productivity. And so I've been attuned to that specific phrase, just like you have on the slide here. We're just busy, 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 and everybody's busy, and we're all busy, and it's just so busy, and it it feeds to this activation in our nervous system. Like when do we get and this and the opposite is not really valuing rest or honoring the need to rest or talking about the need for a break as something that's
Absolutely.
normal or healthy.
100%. Sometimes, if you ever hear that person in your organization that goes, I don't know, I just work here. Ah, that's the hard thing to hear, right? Because it means one, that person doesn't feel like they can speak up. Their voice is not being utilized for the professional organizational growth. And boy, are they feeling it. And so how do you respond? What are you actually hearing versus what are you saying? And I've been guilty of saying, like, I don't know, I just work here. And I recognize then I am setting the standard for how people engage with me because I'm not taking ownership, or I'm not taking enough ownership for even how I engage with leadership and say, hey, I'm not feeling like this is going well. So both things, both sides, whether we hear it or whether we're saying it, really affect the culture and the community that we're working in. Let's jump here. Okay, so what's the reality of what we're working with? Talked to a lot of leaders, right? These CEOs, we're working with the military, we're talking about, right, our supervisors, our command teams, go out in the community, talk to all of these business owners and say, all right, so how are things going? What's the culture of the organization? They go, oh, we have great morale, right? We have monthly potlucks. We do our mandatory fun nights. We get together and have the family barbecues over the people love it here. Okay, those are things you do to have fun, but what is your daily morale? And so daily morale, right? We're really talking about workforce stability when we're talking about morale. What allows your team collectively to contribute consistently? That's what morale is. Morale is not how many times did we have fun? How many times did we hang out? How many times did we have a potluck that, by the way, didn't stop the workload, didn't change any of that, but you were required to take a break and attend because connection is important and that's what makes us happy, right? So that's not morale. Morale is contributing consistently. And do they feel supported to be able to contribute consistently? Versus productivity, right? That's sustainable effort. Do we have the cognitive overload? Do we have high turnover? Do we have decision-making fatigue? And how do we measure those two things against each other, right? Morale and productivity, they go hand in hand. That's another dual continuum that our teams are working on. So what questions are we asking and how are we phrasing that? Where do we understand what the team wants? Good example when we're thinking about morale, right? Everybody, if you ask the entire team, would you rather? Would you rather have more money and time, or would you rather have a potluck? Everyone is obviously choosing the more money and time. But as an organization, we don't always have the ability to just say, here's more money and time. So instead, we go with what we know, we go with what we've seen, and we have the potluck. What if we asked our teams, where does this make sense for you? Who are my introverts in the room? Do you all feel comfortable? Does it help you to go to the everybody event? What if the alternative was, I can't necessarily give you more time. We got to show our hours and our reports, but I'd like to consider what would make you feel included. What would make you feel like part of how we plan what helps our team as a whole? All voices are reasonable. If one quarter we take the extroverts and we say, we're going to plan the party and it's open invitation. And the next time we're going to take the moment of silence and the 10 seconds of breathing exercise for those people, right? Where do people feel heard? How do they engage with the process? What is their stake in the morale in order to help the productivity? So just questions you can ask and you don't have to overthink it. But if you identify today, I think my team has operational risk, it's time to start thinking about what conversations might be necessary. Any examples of teams that are going, I've seen some operational risk in my organization, or I've experienced that? Second.
Okay. As a solopreneur, this is Sarah.
Yeah.
As a solopreneur and one who thinks of herself in like fragmented different places, right? I'm the coach, I'm the CEO, I'm the marketing girl. I do it all. I wear all the different hats. I will sometimes have, don't worry, guys, I'm in therapy. I will sometimes have board meetings with myself and be like, what do you need? Like, okay, marketing's not working. Hey, you really hate this social media stuff. This really burns you out. Like, where can I support even myself? So even looking at myself, I'm looking at all of your slides here is like, I'm the team, and what is sustainable to actually make me feel like my needs are being met, not just going out and having fun on one random night, but where is the, what was the word that you used? Consistent. I wrote consistent self-care. I know you said something else, but being consistent and taking care of myself and my needs. The board is very happy with that decision.
Mhm.
That's great, right? Because that would be the question. Does your leadership team believe something different than what the team believes?
Mhm.
And if the team is going, listen, yes, things are great around here, and the leadership team is going, things are fantastic around here. Is that really the same? Are we agreeing to agree, right? Agreeing to get through. And so listen to the voice, the tone, and the actual language is really important. So I'm glad you do that, Sarah. That's fantastic. You
Yeah.
listen to yourself. That's a great thing. You know best.
I think that's a great signal for everyone in the room because we can't, whether we're a leader or the solo person running the whole business by ourselves, we can't give what we don't have is something that I say constantly in my work. And so I love in this framework how you identify the burnout, the exhaustion, the poor culture in this continuum, this dual continuum of morale and productivity, low morale, low productivity as an operational risk because like to Stacey's point in the chat, like we think mental health is important and yet we don't put ourselves first. Why is that? And what if we could reframe our mental health as about organizational readiness like you have here? Like it's not just a nice to have. If I'm exhausted, I'm affecting the operations of my entire company, whether I'm the solopreneur, the CEO, or the frontline employee of a large company, doesn't really matter. Human like thriving is operationally critical, not just personally critical.
100%. Yes. Thank you for that. So that leads us directly into talking about what those leadership patterns are. Um, we're not going to go through every word here. If you are experiencing and you're seeing operational risk, let's have a conversation offline. Okay. Typically, we're going to see ourselves fall into that operational risk when we've sat in that reactive strain for too long. If you're over in the proactive capacity, wonderful, fantastic, keep doing what you're doing. But let's talk about what we see in our leadership team. Do we see, hey, the timeline's got to be quicker? I don't have time for this. The meeting is over. I've got 15 minutes. Where are we taking time to hear and communicate and actually allow for priorities to be flexible based on reality? Do we have the capacity to accomplish that? Well, as the leader, as the CEO, I like to see those dollar signs. I like to see things moving. I like to see productive people that work for me, right? So let's get it done. But is that really what is necessary? Is it really what's practical? And so understanding where that reactive strain is existing, what those behaviors look like, what the communication style within those areas look like, and then how do I get out of it? Because is that really helping my team? Is it distorting my version, my vision, my perspective on what's actually happening in my organization? And so where do I hear feedback? And what are the signals that my team is giving me that we're operating in that healthy or we're operating in that risk area? I would also say, maybe take a moment here and go, if I don't know who on my team is responsible for monitoring this capacity, where have I assigned duties to say, hey, if you see us heading into that reactive strain or that operational risk, you're my red flag guy. You come let me know. So do you have that person that really monitors and keeps a pulse on things for you? And again, when we start to see that, are we identifying and are we recognizing who is absorbing the impact? Oftentimes, it is not the people at the top that absorb the impact of the reactive strain or the operational risk. seemingly business owners, business leaders, community leaders would be absorbing the risk, right? Because if the outcomes don't meet their standards, we go, oh, that failed. Great, that's on me. But the actual operational risk, the pressure, the impact of all of that is happening for long periods of time, way before you see the outcomes. Who's absorbing that? And those are your individuals where you want to take the pulse. That's where we want to hear the communication about how are the decisions of leadership impacting the abilities of the team. I'll stop again for questions or feedback or experiences. If nothing, I'll keep moving on. Awesome. So this is where we start to talk then about what is mindful leadership in the operational setting. Okay, so what conversations do we need to have, and who needs to be having those conversations? Who do we want in the room to help us lead those discussions? So I'm going to go through, I'm really going to talk about what those 4 conversations are. This is probably where we will take the most amount of time, and absolutely interactive. Jump in the chat if you have some ideas or questions or even examples of better questions that we could have. So as a leader, look at these 4 areas: clarity, boundary, recovery, and trust. If you need to change the word so it's an easier word or a different word or a word that speaks to you more closely, change the word. For me, these are the 4 words that I use to really talk about where we're at in an organization. And so if clarity seems to be the issue, because we're talking about things like, where do we have confusion, right? Where does our team ask the most questions about what needs to be happening, how it needs to be happening? Do we have standard operating procedures? Do we have gaps in our standard operating procedures? How do we communicate what is a priority and what expectations are? Are my expectations implied, or are they well documented and understood? What's the language we use to communicate those things? So clarity is usually where I start when I am doing an assessment on readiness for any organization, right? That's where you might want to start if you're talking about clarity in your own organization and really measuring where wellness is versus that productivity line that we want to make. So if we have that confusion showing up, who needs to be in that conversation? And what are we hearing as feedback in that conversation? Now we'll talk about boundaries. Boundaries in our personal life, right? We hear that a lot. I have to set boundaries. I cannot include myself in these situations or these environments. You don't typically have that option when you go to work. When you go to work, you say, well, this is where I work. If I work in a home office, I've got to set boundaries and say, hey, kids, no, mom's working. If I work in a cubicle, right, I might need to put my headphones on and say, I've got to zone out. I've got to focus on this right now. There's a lot of people talking around me. Those generically seem like the boundaries we can set. But when we're talking about organizational wellness, protecting our people, having that thriving skills, right, organization where our morale and our productivity are off the charts, boundaries mean capacity. How are we setting organizational capacity for our team? Who am I overloading? Why am I overloading them? Why did I think this was realistic? That's when we're talking about boundaries. What happens when a teammate comes to you and says, this timeline is not realistic? This priority should be aligned somewhere else on the list. These demands are not practical for the workload or the expertise or the training level and capacity of our team. When we are getting that feedback, how are we responding? That is how we define our boundaries in an organizational operations. When our team is giving us that information, are we hearing it? Okay. And then are we taking it into consideration? Is this someone coming to me saying, I can't do what you told me to do, and that's the end of the conversation? Or are we taking the opportunity here when we're talking about boundaries to say, oh, You know what? I really didn't realize that you were going to be on leave for 2 weeks. You were going to take that vacation with the family for spring break, and that I assigned you a major project with a deadline smack in the middle of your time off. What can we do about that? Do we need to go back and look at our SOPs about when and how we assign work and what we evaluate before we do that? Was this just an oversight and actually your team is going to be managing it? You're going to be able to sign off on it. No big deal. What conversations are we having to identify when those boundaries are not being respected and how we can evolve those boundaries so that they actually fit the practical abilities of our community? The last piece on boundaries. Do we understand who and where our high performers lay? Are high performers being rewarded or overloaded for being high performers? That is the most common mistake when we look at organizations and boundaries. We assume that because we have high performers, that we don't necessarily have to respect organizational boundaries. That is not true. And the fastest way to impact your productivity and your cultural morale is to overload your high performers and lose them. You will instantly see your productivity go down and the organizational morale go down because now nothing's getting done and we're not meeting any expectations. So if you have a high performer, talk to them. What boundaries do they need to have in place in order to keep them as a high performer? Because those are your frontline leaders to help pull up your underperformers or your lower performing individuals and set a cultural standard. Hear their language and understand where they're coming from. It's not a complaint. It's not an indictment on your leadership. It is an opportunity to help the entire organization perform higher. And we'll jump down to that recovery section. Recovery is really about that major push. Do you reset or do you roll into the next thing? So every organization says, we're doing this, right? Great. We accomplished the mission. Next. That might be required because the client or the business has to keep moving. But it doesn't mean, as a leader, you cannot find time or create time and space to say, hey, you, my high performer, why don't you go take a knee for the day? You're great at what you do. I'm not worried about your return. Go take some time for you. You just killed it on a workload, on a project, on whatever it may be. Recovery. Are we taking time for performance reviews? And this is oftentimes my favorite because we think always as leaders, I supervise, I lead, I talk to my team and go, here's where you're at. Here's your performance review. Here's where I'd like to see improvements made. And then our team goes on about their business and they're always really super happy about the performance conversation because performance is always awesome. Okay, that's not true and that's not realistic. We're having hard conversations. We're giving people constructive feedback. What are we missing oftentimes when we do performance reviews? We are missing the return performance review and the opportunity to mentor every single person in our organization on how to give feedback and how to speak up to management, leadership, supervision on where they see the organization going, on how they understand priorities and how they become leaders. It is not enough in a performance review to give someone feedback and send them on their way. It is a must that during performance feedback, we offer an opportunity to hear, coach, and mentor our team, right? Our people have to have that opportunity to say, thank you for that feedback. That makes sense. This was my understanding. Here's how I'd like to move forward. And these are actually what I feel are more realistic goals or priorities for myself, for my team, for my shop, for my office, wherever they fit in the organization. Giving the opportunity is not enough. You have to mentor that team, that employee, that peer on how to communicate those pieces properly and professionally. If I bring in an employee who needs a lot of feedback and has some really high goals, right? You were here, we really need you here, we want you to stay within the organization. And I just give them feedback. And then I say, do you have any feedback for us? But I've never helped them understand what the professional language is, how to shape a question, or how to approach a problem with ideas and solutions, or options and opportunities for the team or for the organization. I am not doing what I need to do as a leader to help grow that team. I am setting then unrealistic expectations on my team, and I'm setting them up for failure because I'm saying, I lead, you follow, here's the feedback, go do. And what we want to do is equip our teams with language and opportunity to communicate professionally and grow themselves. Every time they leave your office, every time they leave their desk, they are representing you. How are you mentoring them to communicate? And if you're communicating roughly, they're communicating roughly. And that is a reflection on the organization. And that begins to tell you exactly what your morale is, exactly what your culture is. So all of those things really feed into one another there. The last piece is trust. So the words on the screen, right? Psychological safety, constructive dissent, transparent communication, all of the fun, touchy-feely buzzwords that we hear, that we see. So take a step back from that. Don't let that deter you from understanding what it is. What we're asking here is, how well do we handle conflict? Who gets to be mad? Who gets to be frustrated? Who gets to disagree, not like it, and go, and that's okay? Because my organization understands that this professional dissent, right, this rough spot, this pressure and intensity between us actually produces better. Because we're talking about, where do we see things differently? Why do we see things differently? And how can we use that pressure to create something better? If it was already good and we were already going to do it, and I'm already here and working, why not poke holes in it while we have the opportunity as a collective to improve it? If your team does not feel that that professional discourse is an option, what are you missing? Big picture, you're missing dollars. Big picture, you're missing growth in your organization and your team and your company and your business and your own professional growth. In the moment, you're hurting your team, you're hurting your morale, and you're creating a culture that doesn't allow people to grow. If you allow it, if you step back and said, "Ooh, their concerns, their response, their issues with the project, their feedback isn't about me as a person, but about what we could do on the project, on the thing. What can I learn?" And I implore you to be a leader who is open to learning, because I guarantee you, once you've moved into that leadership role, you are part of the system. You are creating the system. You are the bureaucracy. And we've all been there and we said, oh, the system. Let your team tell you what the system really is that you've created. Be open to hearing that. Be open to the feedback. And even if you don't take on every single piece of feedback and make every single change, allowing people to communicate that with you changes the dynamic of your entire organization. And this is where I get to the end and we talk about open reflection, experiences that you have had, areas where you would like to see changes, and interacting with other individuals that are here participating today, seeing what their feedback might be. So I will stop talking because I've talked forever. And I will turn it over to everyone here. If you're more comfortable in the chat, jump in the chat or come off mute. And Rebecca, with nothing heard, I will turn back over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to step back and reflect on how this does impact us as those in the room that are solo entrepreneurs, as well as those in the room that have teams that are leaders. Because there's so much, I often like to say, we don't talk to anybody every day as much as we talk to ourselves, or we talk to ourselves more than we talk to any other human every single day. And so, what are the things that we're even saying to ourselves? Like, I loved your analogy, Sarah, of the committee meeting in my brain. About, go back to that last slide, about especially these things around, I was really resonating with recovery. Um, what does that look like in our everyday routines around giving ourselves permission to pause and recover and have a actual rhythm to our work that allows for effort and then ease and then effort and then ease. Um, like as a metaphor, sometimes it feels like we're treading water because we're just barely staying afloat with all the things we have to do as business owners and leaders, and yet the body can't always tread. We have to sometimes just float. So I'm just curious, thoughts in the room around your own language, around your own energy and your own mental health, and how you sustain that for yourself, and if you have employees, how you sustain that for your employees.
To
Best tip. Go ahead, Sarah.
go ahead. Oh, okay. I was going to say I went back to the boundaries portion of it, back to my board meeting because we were talking about the high performers, right? And I have been in corporate America, and if I was back in corporate America or on a team, I would be identified as one of those high performers. And so all of my high performer parts were kind of laughing and joking about that because it was everything you were saying you can apply to yourself if you are one of those, even in a solopreneurship role. It means giving yourself the day off because you really crushed the day before. Like that's a self-care thing that you can, wow, you really haven't taken an afternoon off in like 3 weeks now. Like it's okay to kind of pause and break, and we can get a lot of things done. We just high performers just tend to going. And then in a leadership role in corporate America, I would be given a more a higher dose of workload. Oh, you finished that? Geez, you finished that really fast. Here's more. We know that happens on teams and in corporate, right? And it's the same when you work for yourself because you can handle it. So you give yourself more. So I really resonated with kind of that piece. And I think that what Rebecca was talking about with the mental health side of it and how you talk to yourself, it is okay to celebrate. You really crushed it. You really did a good job. You really hit that, you know, you hit that goal, you hit that target. Now take a break, go back to your self-care, you know? Yeah, it was good, Rebecca. Thank you. And thank you, Morgan, for sharing. That was a great presentation.
Thank you. And Stacey, I see you're in the chat, planning ahead and not taking a moment to enjoy the win. Happens to the best of us, right? Life is coming fast. But taking that moment to enjoy the win, taking a knee for a second and going, yeah, I did that. Mm-hmm. Incredibly important. It also allows you that opportunity to go, I can do more. Look at this. Reflect on the win, enjoy it, and allow it to really start that brainstorming process for, oh, if I did that, now what can I do? But without that gap, without that time to take that moment for yourself and recover, are you missing more creativity, more actions and feedback for yourself? Yeah. Thank you. Lauren, I know you had come off. Did you have something, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. Well, first, I just wanted to follow up on what you said. I think for those of us who maybe have a more project-based role where it constantly is moving to project, I think what you said is so important. Like, are we really giving the next project the creativity, the time it deserves when we start it, or is it just rolling into kind of like the fatigue of finishing something, and that rolls into just the next thing. My role is very cyclical. It's events and workshops, one after another after another. There's not a lot of pausing and thinking. It's just a lot of doing. So I think that was a really, really great point. Rebecca, thank you for bringing up recovery in the first place. I think that's a really important spot to spend more time that I'd never thought about. But my initial comment was how differently me personally treats my work life and my work boundaries versus my personal life and my personal boundaries. Like you were saying, Rebecca, I feel guilty when someone asks me while I am Lauren at work, how work is, if I don't say busy or like immediately front load them with everything I'm working on so they think I'm busy, I don't know what to do. But that's not how I would answer the question. If someone asked me while I was out with my husband or our kids how life is, busy would not be my answer.
Mm-hmm.
It would be good, thankful, joyful, words that resonate with my personal life. But I think there's such a expectation that to prove our capacity, also I resonate with Sarah and high performers, we want people to know we're doing good work. And so there's always that feeling of having to prove it. And I think putting really good boundaries and just stopping to not have that be the immediate response, and busy shouldn't be glorified. What are all the other things in the work that we're doing, our successes that should be glorified, all of those things. I think that was a really important piece of your presentation, Morgan, that really had me thinking of how differently I would react in those situations if someone were to encounter me as work Lauren versus personal life Lauren, and how maybe that needs some time spent reflecting on why we feel like busy is the word we should be using to describe how we are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're so programmed that way. It's a really good observation. And so is Stacey's about not pausing to celebrate the wins. There were two books that I read in the last couple of years that had a big impact on me in this space. One's called Do Less, um, by a woman named Kate Northrup. And she's a solo entrepreneur. And long story short, kind of learned through a difficult pregnancy that the 1 year she literally couldn't function because her body was making a human. And then that's an important task. And she had to do less. She actually made more money that year. And it was this aha moment for her. And it ended up into this sort of book about how, activity actually doesn't correlate to productivity. Rest does. And then the other book is Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. And he did a lot of research around how we define productivity post-industrial revolution versus pre-industrial revolution. So this one's a little bit more heady, but also has some practical tips about like what did productivity look like in the day of Da Vinci, in the day of Emily Bronte. Like, how do artists consider productivity? It's not a 24/7 clock. It's not Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. It's project based. It's big spurts and then times of rest. It's seasonal. It's how did, productivity look in the agricultural age. So we have a very skewed identity around productivity, that it could be challenged. And I think that we have a lot of data to support that rest is very, very productive. Very, in fact, essentially productive. Hi, Grace. I saw you come off camera. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Hi, hello. Yeah, I was off camera because I'm in my office. I'm actually relocating to Colorado this summer. My partner is an entrepreneur. I'm like part entrepreneur, but one of us has to have a day job to, make sure we have health insurance. So that's my responsibility is having like a business degree. Um, but it was just interesting hearing what you're saying because I'm a career consultant, career coach by trade. And it's a lot of the conversations that I've been having with students recently are more about the quality aspect of things and kind of focus more on like, I guess, reframing it in terms of like recovery.
Mm,
It's been like my whole conversation probably for like since this semester began in January because everybody has like their spreadsheets and they're like, I've applied to all these jobs and the market is really challenging. And there's a couple of components on why it's a challenging market, but I resonate with it in terms of the quality aspect because it's counterintuitive to say you should apply to less jobs than what you're applying to. Because they think, oh, I need to apply to anything that I'm interested in, anything that I might be able to sell my potential on. But in turn, you're then not only not setting the best version of you forward, but you're also not giving yourself space in hindsight for the accountability and like the growth and like the recovery aspect, like that celebration portion of things. So I found that was an interesting like reframe and maybe adaptation that needs to be added in there as well.
What a great comment, Grace. More is not always better. In fact, more is
Yeah.
frequently not better. That's a great way to put it.
I think it's like a fear thing too. They're like,
It
oh, I have to apply like to everything.
is.
It feels very reactionary from what I'm saying.
Thanks for sharing and good luck with your move to Colorado. We hope to meet you
Thank
in
you.
person.
Yes, thank you.
Um, awesome. Well, as we come towards the end of the top of the hour, I want to give Morgan a moment to talk about Holistic as a an opportunity for anyone to take advantage of some great wellness benefits right here in our own community. And then I will close with a little bit more about what you can expect from the SBDC and some of our upcoming topics and how to get engaged with some free consulting if you would like. So Morgan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Holistic and how it can also serve our small business owners in our community?
Thank you. So Holistic is completely born out of being part of a community and really seeing that connecting to resources that increase our quality of life are sometimes limited by those barriers. Our stigmas, our spiritual beliefs, the way we grew up, how we live our life at home versus at work, right? All of those things influence our access to resources. I look at resources as wellness. That's the whole thing, whether it is financial education, formal education, traditional counseling and narrative therapies, body works, all of those things. So we have designed Holistic to help our clients cut through the challenging language that all professions and cultures and communities have and understand wellness at a very generic, but also very personal level. So we can identify what modalities, but also what individuals support their lifestyle of wellness at the entry point that they pick. So that's generically what we do. But big picture is it is reframing a conversation in our community that wellness is not a luxury, right? You don't go to a spa for wellness. And wellness is not an intervention because something has happened. Wellness is a way we conduct our lifestyle. And if it is practical, accessible, and meaningful to the language and culture that I use as an individual, I'm going to access it. So that's what holistic is. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a great way to put it. That's a perfect example of the power of language, right? That wellness is not a luxury and wellness is not something as an intervention when I'm desperate. That wellness is part of our everyday existence that we have to, it's like a maintenance. And so wellness as maintenance for ourselves and for our employees is so, so, so critical. And I love everything about Holistic as kind of a one-stop shop addressing, back to that slide with all the different components of wellness, not just mental health, but physical, financial, relational, spiritual. If we look at that wheel, having all of that in one place is pretty powerful, Morgan. You're building something wonderful. So check out Morgan on social and follow her and learn more about Holistic. It's opening again, ribbon cutting with the Trilix Chamber on April 24th. You can be there and you can also become a founding member now and get some great opportunities. And then also, I'll just let everybody know that this again is a monthly series. It's a weekly series. Business Builders are every week, every Wednesday at noon, virtual topics, all about building your business. Fourth Wednesday of every month is always about well-being, which I curate. Sometimes I speak, and other times I bring in great speakers like Morgan. Next month, I'm bringing in a grief coach and grief recovery specialist talking about the impact of grief on the workplace. So understanding all the different layers of loss, it's not just death. There's so many different things that we lose in our lifetime and have to grieve, including just moves or losing a job or losing an employee. Even some things as simple as a promotion can be a loss that because it's a shift in relationship, it's a shift in identity. And so she'll be talking about the impacts of grief at work and how to navigate that as a business owner, how to navigate your own personal grief. I have a story I'll share about losing my mom and then trying to run a business while I was grieving that. So feel free to come next Wednesday. It'll be April 22nd at noon is our next wellness workshop. And Lauren, do you want to talk about consulting and then we'll close up?
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you again, Morgan. What a great presentation. For those of you who haven't joined the SBDC, or maybe this is your first interaction with us, welcome. And we would love to have you sign up or register for one-on-one advising. As I started kind of the whole Business Builders webinar today with, we offer one-on-one advising in addition to events like this, our in-person events, and our educational classes. I personally believe that the greatest value we add to our small businesses is our one-on-one advising. Rebecca, as I mentioned earlier, is an advisor, and we have a team of about 40 volunteer advisors who give of their time to provide you knowledge and expertise in their respective areas. It is a free service, completely free to you for the lifetime of your business. So sign up for that. You can find more information on our website, pikespeaksbdc.org. You'll see our upcoming events there as well as signing up for your first one-on-one, or if you are a returning client, welcome back. You can sign up to pick up your advising and meet with the same or a different advisor by going through the exact same portal for returning clients. If you have any questions about the work that we do here at the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center, or questions about any upcoming events, please feel free to reach out to myself, or you can email our info@pikespeaksbdc.org email address, and either myself or one of our other team members will be able to support you. But again, it's a free service. You all benefit from the expertise of our advisors, whether it be in mental health and well-being, which is Rebecca's area of expertise, or if you need support in your marketing plan, you wanted to review a business plan, we're here to support you, and we have a fantastic team to help you.
Thanks, as always, everyone, for participating today. And thank you, Morgan, again, for being our great presenter this month. Everyone, remember, take some deep breaths, take care of yourself. You can't give what you don't have, and you matter. So have a great week and a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.